You can't turn your phone while recording. Okay. Let's try this. Right. So I guess I'm live. I have no idea if I'm not, but I've got a viewer. So I'm Chris and I'm broadcasting on the HundrED Facebook site. I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing today. There's a message there, sorry. Yes, the screen is straight now. Okay, so I'm new to Facebook and new this year to HundrED, and in this web day chat I'm going to talk a little bit about untraditional skills, how I've used skills in my work, how I've used evidence in my work, share some ideas that you can use and to take it from there. A little bit about me. I'm Chris. I've worked as a teacher in Yorkshire for over 20 years, and about 3 years ago I developed a teaching approach called Chatta, and that was named as one of the global HundrED collection in Helsinki last year, which has helped me with learning so much, connecting with so many people, and being involved in lots of exciting things. So when I started teaching, as much as I use technology now, my classroom computer would be in the corner of the room, and we would hide it with a blanket. And the idea of the blanket was to deter passing thieves, and it deterred us. The blanket kind of kept it out of arm's reach. And it was only later in my career, thanks to other colleagues, that I began to embrace technology, always with the outcome of working with children. And regarding technology and education, life moves pretty fast, and some things change and some things never will. And in my teaching, I've tried to bring the two together. So the theme of this month's conversation is untraditional skill sets and why they're important for today's world. I'll explain that what that means to me and my innovation with Chatta. And it starts with skills in general. I think learning skills as adults and for students, children, young people is never ever going to be outdated. There will always be things we can learn to do which are new, and there are always going to be things which we can learn to do better. And new skills take us to new places, but old skills need and must not be overlooked. Sometimes we can find a better way that might make a new skill, an old skill, a stepping stone to a new skill, and sometimes there is no better way. But there are certain skills which will never go away, and they're the human skills. So the emotional, the social, the physical development, communication development, resilience, etc. These are things we learn as we grow, and these are things that we teach our children, and these are things which are essential for us to continue to succeed. And when I'd started my work, which took me to Chatta, one skill that was concerning me was talking. And it can be controversial at times because I talk about technology and I talk about talking. But the thing that struck me when I started working with Chatta was smartphones and their impact on talking. And there's lots of good and bad with anything, and moderation is good and a balance is good. But the idea of smartphones and their addictive nature, reducing verbal interactions, is really important for the development of children and young people. And we as adults as well, we can find ourselves immersed in maybe exciting things here, but they can, if we allow them to, reduce language. And when I'd started to look at the wider issue, a lot of the evidence and data, certainly in the UK, is telling us that children are starting school behind in essential early language development. So children are struggling with vocabulary, with social interaction, with turn taking, with asking questions, with explanation, and all of this leads into reading. And this is something that's building. And whether or not it's because we communicate differently now, and words aren't as evident as they might be I'm not sure. But when I was asked to lead a project in my city on language and technology, I asked the question to a few of us, there must be a better way of using technology to support language. We're in a world where a lot of the educational materials and software wasn't focusing on those essential skills of interaction and play and emotional social development, but technology wasn't going away. And what I decided to do was strive to find a better way. As a teacher, I've always had the highest expectations of me and the children I teach, and I know that's important. And I also know there's a wealth of evidence out there that tells us what works. And what I did with Chatta is I started with the outcome that I was looking for, which was language and interaction and explanation in young children, and then took a deep and broad look at the evidence that informs that. So what do children need in those early years to help them learn to speak, to think, to interact, to self-regulate, etc. And what we did is we combined a lot of different parts of evidence into one simple thing that anybody could use. And that's the first thing I'd encourage people watching this to do. Do embrace evidence available. Do look and read deeply and find out more. But don't be afraid to put yourself at the centre of it. You know what works, and you know what you're doing, and you know what you're doing well, and you can always add to that. And with Chatta, that's what we chose to do. So a couple of bits of the evidence that we found. First one, it was based on how children learn to speak, which is a lot naturally to do with the models of language that they hear from the adults that speak to them, and also their opportunities to rehearse. But I'll make reference to a couple of things. First is the Cambridge Handbook of Multimedia Learning by Professor Richard Mayer from University of California. And he recommended this book to me himself because I was desperately trying to find something that would really change learning for teachers, for parents, for children. And it's curious, this book was written in 2005, 2 years before the iPhone, 5 years before the iPad. But the things in here, and would encourage you to read it, really opened my eyes in how we learn and how technology links to that. So a couple of chapters that struck me, if I can find them. Well, one on the importance and multimedia in self-explanation. But this chapter here is multimedia learning in second language acquisition, or moreover, language acquisition. And the thing that excited me regarding this are a couple of things. But one is almost the idea that when we see and hear things simultaneously, the learning sticks in our memory. So if we have a word attached to something like a phone or a man or a shirt, then that's going to stick strongly. And that's the first thing we chose to do with Chatta. We decided to put pictures and words together. And the other thing, just talking a little bit about evidence and research, is the work of Temple Grandin, who was a non-verbal autistic girl in America. Decades ago. She's now a doctor in the USA, but she wrote the book Thinking in Pictures, describing a very visual world of an autistic girl growing up, and really how that thought process was everything to her. So the visual nature of emotions and sensations and all understanding was visual, and through intensive interaction she did become verbal and was able to convey a lot of the visual nature of how we think. And I think this book maps in really, really powerfully to that. So Chatta is a combination of probably 10 different evidence bases of things that work, and it's more powerful than we'd imagined. I'd started it for early years. It's now used with children with special needs and autism and dyslexia. It's used to support children writing, children learning English or any language. We've seen lots of success recently with children who stammer. It's been used with adults who have dementia, and there's definitely a way that it taps into the memory. And I don't know how many people are watching, and if you come back to the video, this will be there for you to try. But I'd said I'd wanted to demonstrate the approach online, which I'm going to do now. And with Chatta, it works for any subject, any level, any person, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the role of the teacher, and I'm going to talk you through Chatta on my iPad. And being a teacher, at the moment I hold the content, I hold the subject knowledge, and you are my student. However, at the end of the Chatta process, I want you to imagine that I might ask you to make a presentation to someone else based on the topic I'm about to teach you about, or prepare a piece of writing. And stick with me, because I'm at home now, so I'm going to talk about a topic which is relevant in my house. However, today I've just come back from Liverpool. I've done Chatta with many groups of children, lots and lots of different subjects, and I've had children 3, 4, 5 years old standing in front of their class, really explaining in depth, articulately and accurately a number of stories and different concepts. Speaking in front of audiences with no notes and no hesitations is a challenge that is hard for the best of us, and they're amazing. So here we go. So I'll put my tablet on here. I might just stand it smartly on the Cambridge Handbook of Multimedia Learning, so you can see. And the topic I'm going to choose today for you is the wire fox terrier. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background on on my wire fox terrier, and I will tell you how Chatta fits in as we go. So wire fox terriers, a breed of dog, and I have one, and he's here, and his name is Monty. And when we take Monty out and about, one of the things that happens to us always is people approach us and they say, oh, I used to have one of these dogs years ago, I remember him from days gone by, my granddad had this particular breed, and we've learned it's very much a vintage breed. I think people in years gone by, they were much more popular, and so it's impossible for us to go out without being approached. And I'd wondered to myself why you don't see quite so many. And then having got one myself, I've got a couple of hints and clues. First one is the holes they dig, and Monty digs a lot of holes in the garden. You could call him a digger dog, which can be frustrating if you want to keep a nice lawn. And the other thing perhaps is their dietary habits, and you can see there he eats socks, my socks. Usually they come back out. Last week we had a £60 excursion to the vet to get one removed, so that's not great news. However, on the positive side, Snowy, Tintin's dog, is a wire fox terrier, so they have a bit of credibility. And final thing from me is he gets us out and about. So he gets us off our phones, walking with the family, in the park, in the hills. And so, yes, he eats socks, yes, he digs holes, but he gets us out and about. So that's me giving you a little bit of an overview. When I'm working with children with Chatta, I record their voice, or my voice first, and their voice if they want to, because Chatta's about subject knowledge, images, and modelled language. So I'm going to put a couple of sentences on here about the wire fox terrier. And if you just bear with me as I go, because I'm working upside down, but I'm also working, and the screen is very dim, so hang on a second, make that brighter for me, possibly too bright for you. Okay, so here goes. This is a wire fox terrier. That will do. I can play that back. This is a wire fox terrier. The breed was popular in years gone by, notably the 1930s. The breed was popular in years gone by, notably the 1930s. They have an unfortunate habit of digging holes in the garden. They have an unfortunate habit of digging holes in the garden. They also have a tendency to eat socks, which is neither healthy or cheap if you have to visit the vet. They also have a tendency to eat socks, which is neither healthy or cheap if you have to visit the vet. However, they are immortalised in the Tintin books, with Tintin's dog Snowy being a wire fox terrier. However, they are immortalised in the Tintin books, with Tintin's dog Snowy being a wire fox terrier. And best of all for my family, the dog helps us exercise, put down our phones and go out for a walk. And best of all for my family, the dog helps us exercise, put down our phones and go out for a walk. And we use this for absolutely any subject. And I can share this with parents of children, and they can access the same thing on their phone. But what happens from here is children give a very strong presentation based on whatever they've been taught. So I've been quite abstract, talked about my dog, and they will link the thoughts together. With the aim of Chatta, I want them to give a presentation to an audience. So I would model it myself, and I would hand over to them and say, right, over to you, give me a presentation about wire fox terriers. And they would come in just like I'm going to do now. I'll go fast. A breed of dog in my house is the wire fox terrier. They seem to be a breed of yesteryear, with many people looking back on them as a dog they had in perhaps the 1930s or time gone by. Maybe one of the reasons for their lower popularity is the number of holes they tend to dig in the garden, or the socks they eat and the damage they cause to the house. However, they're still popular to this day because of the dog in Tintin, and in my family he gets us out every day, so it's a good dog to have. Now, I'll put that over there. If I was to ask you, wherever you're watching, having seen that, could you speak for 60 seconds to a stranger about that particular breed of dog? You would probably find that you've got enough to go at. And you'd probably find in your thoughts, you'd remember the holes that they dig. You'd remember that I go out with my children in the hills with him, or that he eats the socks, or that he appears in black and white photographs from the 1930s. And that's broadly what we've done with Chatta, and it's been used for people with scientific explanations, with people with public speaking, like I said, people with dementia. Had a boy last week, had never spoken in class, had a crippling stammer, and he told a full story to his classmates, having experienced the approach once. So it is exciting, and I'm very happy to share it. If people are interested in finding out more, you can always email me, chris.williams@chatta.co.uk. Likewise, if you have any ideas of your own and want suggestions how to connect with the evidence base, do ask, and I will have probably forged a lot of ground before you, because it's taken a lot of vision to try to create it, having pulled all these things together, but it's now effective for children with autism, dyslexia, etc., lots of different things. For me, the HundrED community can be especially helpful. I can't explain how much the HundrED community has helped me, even since I met people in November. I've had meetings in London, had meetings in Manchester, had conversations with people from Ireland, Switzerland, Helsinki, and probably learned more about teaching and education in the global picture than I'd ever imagined. I would suggest a lot of the HundrED innovations are exciting and worth seeing. I'd like to name them all, but three that stand out for me at the moment, if you want to explore, they're available on the HundrED website. There's Hay Schools, HEI, which is building a sustainable model of sharing Finnish education internationally. I hold a lot of value for Finnish education, especially in the early years, in terms of the way that children develop and become fully developed in the kindergarten years in Finland, and I think that leads to such success in later life. I would also suggest amaze.org, and it's a very powerful and relevant, accessible resource, sexual health resource for children and young people aged 10 to 14. And I think it's something that's, again, forging ahead with a need and finding a solution. Further to that, a complete inspiration to me has been Skatistan, and Skatistan has used the hook of skateboarding to help educate children in a number of countries, including thousands in Afghanistan, with take-up including over 50% of girls. And the story of Skatistan is absolutely inspirational to me. And I think as educators, as teachers, we can learn from each other. And I would suggest to anybody finding success or challenge in their classroom, there is always a better way, and you are the best person to find it. And when you take that step and start to build on what works, where the success comes from, and make that better, the sky is the limit. And I think that's what I found. I think we're lucky now in a time where educational research is widely distributed and accessible and available, and people are always willing and ready to help. And I would encourage people to pursue their ideas, because I think 3 years ago none of this existed, and now it's used in hundreds of schools with thousands of children in a number of countries across the world. And every day I get stories of impact where people, teachers and parents, are saying to me, this is so simple, so powerful, why has nobody thought of this before? And you teaching in a classroom are able to do that. So final words from me. One, I'm at BET London all next week. If you are around, I'd be delighted to meet you. I'm on stand A20 with the UK Department of International Trade. Be glad to show you Chatta and learn more about you. I would say to audience now and in the future, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to further involvement with the HundrED community, and our next webinar on HundrED is HundrED Ambassador Craig Vezina from France, who'll be joining us on Wednesday the 23rd of January, which I'm looking forward to completely. So I'm Chris Williams. I'm really grateful for your time, and I hope you have success in all you do now. So bye bye.